I was calm in the morning when the sound of gravel crunching under heavy tires jolted me out of it. Coffee in my hands as I stood on the porch of my mountain cabin, with the valley below still covered in fog. I had told myself for weeks that the silence and peace here could not be disturbed, that no one could reach me there. However, I felt the kind of dread that can't be quenched with coffee when I observed a convoy of dented black SUVs traveling up my private road. Doors swung open, cheap boots hit gravel, and out spilled a half-dozen men wearing knockoff uniforms. Radios were clipped to their belts like ornaments, none of which were even powered on, and plastic badges shone in the early morning sun. At their center marched Gloria Whitfield, the self-crowned queen of a suburban homeowners association I didn't even belong to. She smiled without letting her eyes touch her lips. She looked at me like a warden about to reclaim an escaped prisoner. Before I tell you how it came to this, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button before we dive in. It really helps the channel grow. Also, let me know where you're watching from in the comments section because I love seeing how far these stories go. And tell me, have you ever dealt with a Karen in your neighborhood? Mr. She stated, Walker, our community has jurisdiction over this property. You are in violation of our standards. Behind her, the so-called HOA security team squared their shoulders like they were ready to storm my gate. They were unaware, however, that I was not alone. Actually, no. Family was closer than they thought. And when my cousins came roaring up the ridge on Harleys, leather jackets gleaming, the illusion of Gloria's authority would crumble like ash in the wind. I bought this cabin because I was suffocating. In a cul-de-sac where gossip traveled faster than fire and where every move was scrutinized by the board, I lived for years among manicured lawns and plastic smiles. If your grass grew half an inch too high, you got a notice. You were fined if your trash cans were visible for more than 10 minutes. If your kid's basketball hoop leaned an inch onto the sidewalk, you got a letter demanding immediate correction. At first, I laughed at it. Then I tolerated it. And eventually, I realized I was paying for the privilege of being treated like a child in my own home. I needed air. I desired land. I wanted the hiss of neighbors spraying fertilizer at dawn to break the silence, not the wind through the trees. I therefore sold everything and discovered the cabin. It wasn't on Zillow. Brochures did not contain it. It was word of mouth, and it was hidden on a ridge where cell service stopped working and county lines became wild. Logs stacked by hand, stone chimneys scarred with history, porch beams carved by someone who had lived and died long before me. I knew I was at home when I stood on that porch the first morning and couldn't hear anything. No leaf blowers, no distant highway hum, or even the faintest drone of a lawnmower. I thought I'd escaped. I thought wrong. The first letter came folded in half, tucked under a rock on my gate. The phrase, Notice of Violation, Landscaping. Infraction, Unauthorized Growth. I actually laughed, out loud. The unauthorized growth was a forest older than the HOA itself. Did they want me to mow down a mountain? I tacked the letter to my fridge with a magnet, a souvenir of the madness I'd left behind. The subject of the second letter was unapproved exterior modifications. My sin? A hammock connected to 2 pines. By the third letter, failure to submit architectural plans for shed construction when I hadn't built a shed. I wasn't laughing anymore. By the fourth, rage replaced humor. The weekly letters were signed by Gloria Whitfield, president of the HOA, and stamped in red. I initially ignored them. After that, I mailed one back with the following note. This is county land. You have no jurisdiction. Her response was a fresh letter, stapled with a printed copy of the HOA's bylaws, and a handwritten note at the bottom. Mr. Walker, you'll do as I say. Eventually, everyone does. Those words burned more than any fine. It didn't stop with letters. When I went into town for supplies, I heard whispers. At the gas station, 2 men I'd never met murmured about the recluse on Ridge Road who thinks he's above the rules. I witnessed a woman stare before murmuring, That's him, at the diner. Gloria had warned us about that one. Gloria was poisoning the well. She wasn't content to harass me alone. She wanted the town to turn against me, too. One afternoon, I found a notice nailed to a tree at the base of my driveway. Failure to comply may result in enforcement action. The nail cut into the bark, sap bleeding like a wound. That's when I realized this wasn't petty anymore. It was warfare. The morning it happened was quiet. Too quiet. Mist curled over the ridge, wrapping the trees in silver. I was on the porch, cradling a chipped mug of coffee when the sound started. Low, grinding, alien to the stillness. SUVs, black, dented, mud-caked, crawling up my private road in a line, like a snake winding through the rocks. After putting my cup down, I left the porch. Gravel crunched under my boots as I walked to the gate. My chest tightened with every footstep. When the cars stopped, the doors opened all at once. Out spilled men in mismatched uniforms, navy blue shirts 2 sizes too big, khaki pants tucked into boots like costumes, badges that gleamed but meant nothing. Their belts carried radios, but I noticed quickly, no batteries. No static, just props. Gloria then occupies the center. Her hair was perfect, sprayed into a helmet that not even the mountain wind could dislodge. Her heels clicked on the gravel as if she were walking a marble lobby, not a dirt road. "Mr. Walker," she announced, "you are trespassing on HOA property." I clenched my jaw. "This is not your land." "It falls under extended jurisdiction. You failed to respond to multiple notices. I am authorized to enforce compliance as president." "Authorized by who? The county? The state? God himself?" Her lips tightened. "By the community." Behind her, the fake officers shifted, hands twitching near their belts. "Remove yourself peacefully," she said, "or we will remove you." I stood at my gate, heart hammering, staring at 6 men who wanted to believe they were enforcers. One looked barely old enough to rent a car. Another kept scratching at the peeling patch on his sleeve. I could hear the coins clinking in his pocket as a third of them moved with such nervousness. They weren't soldiers. They weren't cops. They were neighbors in costumes. Still, the danger was real. Arrogance armed with desperation can be more dangerous than bullets. Gloria raised her head. "Move aside." "I haven't." "Step on my land and you're trespassing." The air thickened. The men lined up, trying to look disciplined. Gloria extended her hand as though she were about to issue the command. After that, it started out as a whisper. The wind obscured a distant thud. Then it grew. Louder. Stronger. Rhythmic, like the sound of drums pounding in the valley. The guard stopped moving. Gloria's hand faltered. "Engines." The noise grew until it was heard everywhere, around us and shaking the air. The birds scattered, the mist trembled, and the mountain seemed to wake. I then observed them. Over the ridge, a dozen Harley-Davidsons with black leather jackets and chrome that caught the sun emerged. The riders moved together, a group that was built on discipline rather than chaos. My cousin, Dean Walker, was at their head. Army Ranger decorated, scarred, tempered by battles most people only see in nightmares. The Harleys rolled down the gravel like thunder-made flesh. They stopped in unison, engines idling with a growl that drowned out every word Gloria might have tried to speak. Dean got off his bike, took off his gloves, and walked in front of the other person. His presence filled the space like gravity. "You failed?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp enough to slice through steel. The change in Gloria's officers was instant. The bravado drained from their faces. Their shoulders slumped. One licked his lips, eyes darting to the ground. Another whispered, "We didn't sign up for this." Dean looked each man in the eye. Not one of them held his gaze. Gloria attempted to get better. She barked, "This is official business. You have no right to interfere." Dean grinned. "Lady, the only thing official here is that you're trespassing." Silence. The kind of silence that is more significant than sound. One by one the men broke. They turned, hurried back to their SUVs, slammed doors and revved engines. As they fled, tires spinning and dignity abandoned on the road, gravel spat. In less than a minute they were gone. Gloria was all that was left, standing on her own with a pale face and trembling voice. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I'll fine you." She turned on her heel, slamming her heels into the gravel, and then vanished into her car. 3 days later, a letter arrived. Violation noise pollution, unapproved motorcycle disturbance. Fine, $500. I pinned it to the wall of my cabin, not as punishment, as a prize, proof that her empire of paper and threats was powerless against the strength of family, of loyalty, of real resolve. I came to these mountains chasing silence. I believed that the remedy was solitude. However, that day I gained a deeper understanding. Silence is not the only aspect of freedom. It's about refusing to back down when someone tries to take what belongs to you. Knowing that there is something more powerful than fear behind you, family, brothers, and people who will ride through fire to defend your position, is the key. Intimidation was the foundation of Gloria's HOA, my lodging, my family. We were built on determination, and that's something no letter, no fake badge, no self-appointed queen could ever touch. You know the feeling if you have ever stood up to someone who is trying to control your life with empty threats, that moment when you realize they only have power if you let them. Tell me your story in the comments. And if you want to hear more battles like mine, stories of standing tall against the absurd, subscribe. Because trust me, this wasn't the last time I had to defend this cabin.